um, to make a kenes is a very tricky and complicated thing. And the reason is simple. Because when you're making a kenes, you're making a gathering of people who are coming to get stronger in a certain area and a certain idea. But what makes it complicated is that everyone who joins a kenes are already strong in that area. And everyone who's weak in that area don't come to the kenes. For example, I'm sure Refrain put together a beautiful kenes about Eretz Yisrael here, but I'm sure everyone in this room lives in Eretz Yisrael already. The people in Chutz Eretz have to be listening to this kenes. So making kenes is it's a bit complex. Like, have you ever noticed that all the knessim, all the gatherings about against technology on Taras HaKodesh, everyone who goes to the kenes, none of them have iPhones. People who all have iPhones are outside of the kenes. So keneses are a very complex idea, and thank you, Refraim, to bring it together. But in honesty, a kenes about Eretz Yisrael is so well needed, even for those who live in Eretz Yisrael. And the reason is simple. Besides for the idea of Eretz Yisrael being niknes b'yisuri, the Chazon Ish would always say, the Gemara says, Eretz Yisrael is acquired through suffering. And we all have to know that. Anyone who lives in Eretz Yisrael, anyone who made Aliyah, Eretz Yisrael is acquired through suffering. And there's no other way to go around it. And if it's not acquired through suffering, you should worry. Well, what's with your lot? How come you have such an easy time? But the Chazon Ish would always say Eretz Yisrael is acquired through suffering, and then you'd add with a ton of patience. But Eretz Yisrael, you'll find a lot of similarities between Eretz Yisrael and the Torah. And it's not surprising, because we all know the Gra speaks about it, the Malbim speaks about it, all the Rishonim speak about it. Eretz Yisrael and the Torah are always parallel to each other, because they're codependent on each other. If you don't have Torah, then you don't have Eretz Yisrael. If you don't have Eretz Yisrael, then you don't have Torah. It must be the two of them go together. So Eretz Yisrael, just like the Torah, we find that the Torah, it says, Chazal constantly stress that every day a person should look at it as if that day he received the Torah. We're over 3,300 years later. It should be as if Hayom Kibaltem Ezem Har Sinai. We find the same thing. Rashi in Parshas Abo, he says, Vayaki v'yachal Eretz Kanani, the parsha we have in Tefillin, Vayaki v'yachal Eretz Kanani. Rashi there says, Vayaki v'yachal. What's Vayaki v'yachal? Says Rashi. You should look at it as if today you were brought to Eretz Kanani. As if today you came to Eretz Yisrael. And don't say that, oh, no, I have Eretz Yisrael because it's from my forefathers. No, says Rashi. Just like the Torah is given every day, you should look as if you were given today on Har Sinai. Also says Rashi, every day you should look as if, today I got Eretz Yisrael. Today's the first day I made Aliyah. This idea is so important. There's somebody at the Kaisel. Somebody once went to the Kaisel, and he sees somebody crying up against the wall. So he goes closer. What's he crying? And he's crying, and then he heard, Abba, I want to be with my nation. Tata, I want to be with my people. The guy goes closer. You want to be with your people? What? He goes closer, and here's this guy crying. Hashem, I want to be with my people. I want to be with my people. So after he finishes this tefillah, he goes to the man. He says, excuse me, I'm just curious. What do you mean you want to be with your people? You're in Eretz Yisrael. You're in Yerushalayim. You're by the Kotel HaMa'aravi. What more of the people could it be? He's like, no, I want to be with my people on Miami Beach. It's a joke, but it's a sad joke. The concept of living in Eretz Yisrael and appreciating every day that we have the zechut of being here, every day where it's like being in a sukkah, every day we're fit, we do a mitzvah, deoraita, that is equivalent to the 613 mitzvot. We should constantly remind ourselves, Avram Avinu, Parshas Lech Lecha, Avram Avinu, Hashem says, Lechecha le'artzecha modatecha, Avram Avinu's first test. And he goes up to Eretz Yisrael. After he goes to Eretz Yisrael, right after that, he finally lands in Eretz Yisrael. Right after that, a famine in the land. Abraham Avinu is forced to go into exile. He goes down to Mitzrayim. And then only after he goes to Mitzrayim, the whole story with Paroi and Sarah, he comes back to Eretz Yisrael. The Shlach Kodesh asks, I don't understand what's up. Hashem, you told Avraham Avinu his big test, Lech lecha martzecha, go from your land. You brought him to Eretz Yisrael. Now you're kicking him out. Why are you kicking him out? Then you come bring him back? What's the whole story? So the Shlach Kodesh is so beautiful. He says that Avraham Avinu, before he came to Eretz Yisrael, he knew it was a land of prophecy, but he didn't know. He didn't feel. It wasn't real by him what Eretz Yisrael really was. Once he finally came to Eretz Yisrael, he immediately became enveloped by the Kedusha. He felt Hashem in it. It was like an experience he never experienced as a Shlach Kadosh. It was the greatest moment of his life. Hashem said, now you know what I had in mind all the time. Now go out of Eretz Yisrael, leave it for 5 years, go down to Mitzrayim, miss Eretz Yisrael, want to have that feeling of wanting to come back and coming back to Eretz Yisrael, and then you're going to come back. We don't all have to be sent to Chutz Aretz like Avraham Avinu to have that love, to be rekindle that, to awaken that lost love of Eretz Yisrael. That's a beautiful thing that Rabbi Ephraim did with us, making sure beautiful kennis of talking, be mechazek each other about the greatness of living in Eretz Yisrael. We just finished Purim. Now, the Jews by Purim were in a bad. Just this week we just had Purim. Just I think it's far away. The Jews in Purim were in a bad situation. We're looking at it afterwards, but at that time the Jewish people were facing another Holocaust, nothing short of another Holocaust. What's the reason why they had it so bad? What was the reason for such a bad decree? So it's a Gemara Megillah. The Gemara says, Rav Shimon Bar Yochai asked his students, what do you guys say? Why was there such a bad decree against the Jewish people in times of Mordechai and Esther? So the student said, because they enjoyed the Suda. We all know Achashverosh made a big Suda, so they enjoyed the Suda of Achashverosh. So therefore, it was decreed upon them in order that they will be annihilated. Now the poskim, the halachic poskim have they take up this Gemara, they take issue with this Gemara. Okay, so they enjoy the Suda. So where's the chiyuv mita? Where's the penalty of death for enjoying a Suda of a non-Jew? So some poskim want to say the big sin here that's punishable by death is because we know that he served kosher food, but they ate kosher food that was made by a non-Jew, so it's bishul akum. That's a very hard answer to digest, because bishul akum is not chiyuv misa. It's derabanan, and it's one of the lighter derabanans. There's easy ways to get around bishul akum. Some people say it was stam yenam, that it wasn't even yain nesech, it was stam yenam, which is also very hard to digest. Stam yenam, because of that, somebody's going to be chayiv misa. A whole generation, the whole Jewish people chayiv misa, narvat zaken. The Ein Yaakov says so beautifully. He says, why did Achashverosh make this party? He made this party because he finally calculated the years that the Jewish people aren't going back to Eretz Yisrael. That the prophecy of them building a second base of Mikdash is not going to be fulfilled. Says Ein Yaakov, people who could go to a party that's celebrating that they're not going back to Eretz Yisrael, that they're not building the Beit HaMikdash again. Such people are hopeless. You have no hope. You have no future. It's not about you did an Avera, you didn't do an Avera. You're hopeless. How could you celebrate a party saying, that's it, we're happy we left Eretz Yisrael. Life is good in Lakewood. Life is good in Borough Park. How's it not on your mind every day that Eretz Yisrael is where a Jew belongs? Says Ein Yaakov, that's why they were punished with such a terrible punishment. Until Mordechai and Esther made everybody do proper teshuvah. Talking about Mordechai, the first pasuk, the second pasuk, Mordechai, the Mordechai was, and it says, Asher hoglai ima gola, ima gnoglata, Asher b'mei, I can't remember the pasuk by heart, so I was meant to bring a chumash. The Gaon of Vilna points out, he says, in that pasuk that introduces Mordechai Tzaddik, it says the word exile 4 times. And Mordechai Tzaddik, that was exiled in the time of the exile of the time in the days of Yochania. So the Gaon of Vilna, how come it says the word for exile 4 times? So the Gaon of Vilna point, it's credible. The Gaon of Vilna writes, he says, look how much Mordechai Tzaddik appreciated Eretz Yisrael. The first time it says Asher Hogla, he was exiled. We said 4 times. The first time it says he was exiled with the whole Jewish people. Everyone went to Bavel. Mordechai understood that Eretz Yisrael is like oxygen for him. It's parallel to the Torah. You can't learn without Torah. Rabbi Kiva told Papas ben Yehuda, he said, I know the Romans are going to kill me, but let them kill me. I can't live without Torah. Mordechai Tzaddik said, I can't learn to live without Eretz Yisrael. So all the Jews went to exile, Mordechai included. Mordechai came back to Eretz Yisrael by himself. The king above understands what he did. So what does he do? He sends a special unit, a task force, come get Mordechai. They capture Mordechai in Eretz Yisrael, and again they bring him to Bavel. And again, the king above understands what happens. And again, he sends a special task force back to Eretz Yisrael to capture Mordechai. That was the love and passion that Mordechai at Tzaddik had for Eretz Yisrael. And we're not talking about the time. Don't say that's because there was a Beis HaMikdash. We're talking about the times of destruction of the temple. There was no Beit HaMikdash at that time. But for Mordechai Tzaddik, he understood that the only place a person can have an absolute kesher, a true relationship with the Borei Olam, it's only in Eretz Yisrael. So I'm going to risk going back by myself without a Beit HaMikdash. That was Mordechai Tzaddik. What about our Gedolim? We don't have to go so far from Mordechai Tzaddik. What about our Gedolim? Let's take the Chafetz Chaim. The Chafetz Chaim had 3 son-in-laws. All 3 son-in-laws, Sfardim don't do it, but Ashkenazim have their call. You guys know what it is. They have the Tanaim before the wedding. We do the Tanaim. All this Tanaim, the Chafetz Chaim wrote one thing that had all of it with all 3 of his son-in-laws. That the Chafetz Chaim helped support all his 3 son-in-laws. They're all big Talmidei Chachamim. And he supported them in Kollel. He said, if I go to Eretz Yisrael, you cannot take me to Beis Din because I'm going to stop supporting you financially. For Chafetz Chaim was so real, the idea of going to Eretz Yisrael. 4 times he bought a ticket to Eretz Yisrael. Ad Kedei Kach, he sent all his belongings to Eretz Yisrael. Until today, you go to Petach Tikva, they have a house that the Chafetz Chaim already purchased. It's called the Bet Chafetz Chaim. You can visit it today. And not only that, it didn't end with the son-in-laws. The Chafetz Chaim married his second wife, Rebbetzin Zaks, Rabbanit Zaks. In the Tanaim he wrote, if I go to Eretz Yisrael, you have to come with me. You can't put up any fights. In Har Nov, there's a very big Talmid Chacham, Rav Shurkin. He's a Rosh Yeshiva of Torah Moshe. His father was a Rosh Yeshiva of Torah Vadas, Rav Yaakov Shurkin. Gaon Olam. So Rav Yaakov Shurkin, he was in Torah Vadas in Brooklyn, but he was Meshamish. He learned under the Chafetz Chaim for 16 years in Radin. Gaon Olam. He was one of the 10 people that Zoche to do the Tahara on the Chafetz Chaim after he passed away. So Rav Shurkin writes in the name of his father. He has a beautiful book called Meged Givot Olam. He writes in the name of his father that anytime somebody came to the Chafetz Chaim, after he visited the Chafetz Chaim would tell him in Yiddish, please take me with you to Eretz Yisrael. Even if the person wasn't going to Eretz Yisrael, please take me away with you to Eretz Yisrael. That's how the Chafetz Chaim appreciated Eretz Yisrael. Rav Gifter, the famous Rosh Yeshiva of Telz, he finally got the call. He came to Eretz Yisrael for 2 years. After 2 years that he built a yeshiva in Telstone, after 2 years, the Rosh Yeshiva back in America passed away. The Stipler said, you have to go back to America to head your yeshiva again. Rav Gifter, he was shocked. His Talmidim write that it was the 2 most fantastic years of his life. He got back to America. He was so shell-shocked by the difference of his ruchaniyut, of his spirituality, his Torah learning. So he said, how can I possibly live a normal life in Eretz Yisrael? He told his Rabbanit, he said, Rebbetzin, I can't live in a house in Chutz Aretz. We're moving into the dorm. To the last day of his life, him and his wife lived in the dorm in the Telz Yeshiva. The Gedolim understood. Okay, so he had to be in Chutz Aretz. So it doesn't mean we're all getting Teslas and having the biggest mansions in Borough Park. So he lived in Chutz La'aretz, but he lived Rav Gifter, the Gadol Ador. The Ben Yishai, by Sfaradim, the Ben Yishai was like saying the Gaon Milvona, the Ben Yishai. The Ben Yishai's whole, it's hard to go one page in the Sefer of the Ben Yishai without him mentioning Eretz Yisrael. The Ben Yishai finally, he reached his dream. He came to Eretz Yisrael for 3 weeks. During those 3 weeks, he met with all the Gedolei Hador. The famous song, V'amartem kol achai Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. The Ben Yishai wrote that when he went to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's kever in Miron. After 3 weeks, it finally came to an end. The Ben Yishai had to go back to Iraq. He was a Gadol Hador, the Ben Yishai. And by the Sephardi jury, undisputed Gadol Hador. He couldn't stay in Eretz Yisrael. But he said, I have to go back. What could I do? But he said, you know what? If I have to go back, at least let me take Eretz Yisrael back with me. So what did he do? He took 2 stones. 1 stone from Har HaZeitim, 1 stone from the Kotel Plaza, and then a sack of earth. He goes back to Baghdad. The bag of earth he puts on the main synagogue. It's called Beit Zilkia in Baghdad. He puts on all over the floor of the main synagogue of Baghdad. The first stone that he had, he put it under the mezuzah of the same synagogue, Beit Zilkia in Baghdad. He put it under. That way, anyone who came to the Beit Knesset, which on the regular Shabbat, there was around 4,000 people visited that Beit Knesset, there'd kiss a mezuzah, and then there'd kiss a stone of Eretz Yisrael. The Ben Yishai understood. He wanted to instill it in the hearts of the Sephardi Jew what Eretz Yisrael is. And what did he do with the second stone? The second stone he said, I want it to be buried, to be put it on top of me when I go in my caver. The Ben Yishai had a very famous student. The Ben Yishai didn't keep this love of Eretz Yisrael to himself. He understood it has to be passed on. One of his most famous students is called the Kalfa Chaim, Rabbi Yaakov Chaim Sofer. Anyone knows it? Kalfa Chaim Sofer is one of the most well-known Sfarim when it comes to Psak Halacha. The Ben Yishai is actually the one who gave him smicha. The Kalfa Chaim, like his Rebbe, he said, my Rebbe went to Eretz Yisrael for 3 weeks. I also want to go to Eretz Yisrael for 3 weeks. So he goes to Eretz Yisrael for 3 weeks. After 3 weeks, he was just so taken aback by the new person he transformed into. He said, I can't go back. But what could he do? He has his wife back at home. But he couldn't go back. He couldn't accept the reality. Like Mordechai at Tzaddik. Mordechai, 2 times he came back to Eretz Yisrael. He couldn't accept this reality of having to live and go back to Baghdad. So he wrote a letter to his wife, apologizing and saying, I hope you understand me, but I really hope you could come with me to Eretz Yisrael. And if not, I want to go according to to Jewish law. And if not, we're going to get divorced. And this is your divorce letter. So what do you do with somebody, when anybody has such a situation? What do you do in such a severe situation? You go to the Gadol Hador, you go to Big Rabbanim. Who is the Gadol Hador? The Ben Yishai. She said, Ben Yishai, my husband's a Kalfa Chaim. He wants to stay in Eretz Yisrael. I live in Baghdad. What should I do? The Ben Yishai says, heard her out, and she said, I advise you to listen to your husband's advice and go to Eretz Yisrael. But I also advise you to sell half of his library. That way you could go benachat. You could go with peace, in luxury. That was how our Gedolim properly appreciated Eretz Yisrael, where they took these halachot seriously. We all know the famous Mishnah, Rabbi Narai Omer, Eini milamedet beni ela Torah bilvad. Rabbi Narai says, the only thing I will ever teach my son is Torah. It's one of the most famous Mishnot in all of Shas. Who's greater than the Khatam Sofer? The Khatam Sofer says, you should know, what Rabbi Narai said that I'll only teach my son Torah? That's only in Chutz La'aretz. But in Eretz Yisrael, it's a mitzvah to tell your son, stop learning for a few hours a day and learn agriculture. Learn how to be Mekayem Mitzvat Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. And the Khatam Sofer understood that people are going to be bothered by this. And he writes, and if somebody's going to ask me, how can I be Mevatel Torah? How can I stop learning Torah in order to learn agriculture, to plant trees? Says the Khatam Sofer, I'll also tell him, are you going to say that it's called Bitul Torah in order to put on tefillin? Whenever I tell this Khatam Sofer, I tell people, yeah, it's in Torah Moshe. His explanation, his commentary on the Chumash. Say, so he didn't mean it literally. He meant it as more of an idea. Say, no. He also writes it as Chidushim on the Gemara. It's the same exact Khatam Sofer. When the Khatam Sofer writes that in Eretz Yisrael you should be mevatel Torah in order to learn agriculture. People think that Eretz Yisrael, it's only for the tzaddikim. It's only for people like Mordechai Tzaddik. There's like incredible Gemara in Mesechet Ketubot. The Gemara says, afilu shivcha knanit, a maidservant, a non-Jewish maidservant, who lives in Eretz Yisrael, she's guaranteed a portion of the world to come. Now, the Marsha, all Achronim don't understand why. So the Marsha first establishes we must be talking about she was a Canaanite maidservant who ended up doing a Giyur. So she must have the Sheva Mitzvot. But even if she has the Sheva Mitzvot, says the Khatam Sofer, says the Marsha, I don't understand why. So she's not Jewish, but she's not a non-Jew. So why would that make her promise her living in Eretz Yisrael? Give her guarantee her portion in the Olam Haba? Ask the Marsha even further. I don't understand. So if you're already talking about somebody who's not fully Jewish, not fully Goyish, so then just say, why a maidservant? Say a servant, a male servant. Why a maidservant, a female servant? Say I'm a servant, a male servant. A male servant who lives in Eretz Yisrael is guaranteed a portion of the world to come. Marsha says so beautifully. He says people have this misconception that Eretz Yisrael is for the Ben Yishai, it's for Chacham Ovadia, Rebbe Yashiv. Says the Marsha, no, it's for the lowest of the lowest. Eretz Yisrael, elevated person. How do we see that? A maidservant, a servant who works for a non-Jewish servant who works for a Jew. How many mitzvot does he have to his name? He has 2 mitzvot. Brit Milah he has to do, and he also has to go to the mikveh. He only has 2 zichuyot. He only has 2 mitzvot to his name. Says the Marsha, the Gemara purposely said a female servant. Why? A female maidservant, she doesn't even have 2 zichuyot. She has 1 zichut. She doesn't have Brit Milah. She only has a mikveh. Even somebody only has one thing to their name. Only one mitzvah to their name. Eretz Yisrael is so powerful. It impacts a person so greatly that it promises them a portion of the world to come. I'm just going to finish with one short letter from Rav Meir Meprimizhan. Rav Meir Meprimizhan was one of the great first Hasidic masters who came to Eretz Yisrael. He came to Eretz Yisrael, we're talking about in the 1800s. One of the first Hasidim came to Eretz Yisrael, and he wrote 3 letters. This is brought in the Netivot Shalom by Deyot in volume 1. An incredible letter. He penned 3 letters to his Talmidim back in Chutz La'aretz, in diaspora, once he came to Eretz Yisrael. The first letter goes like this. I am here in Eretz Yisrael. I'm completely at lost. All the great spiritual heights and kedusha that I was on in Chutz La'aretz, I'm left in darkness here. I don't feel any of it. I'm completely at lost. That was his first letter. Sometime later, he pens a second letter. Second letter reads like this. Baruch Hashem, my situation is a bit better. I am growing in spirituality, Kedusha and Torah, but I am not at where I was previously in Chutz La'aretz. That's the second letter. The third letter reads like this. Baruch Hashem, I am well established in Eretz Yisrael. I completely understand the Kedusha and the Tahara and the Torah that we have in Eretz Yisrael, that even in my times of darkness of my previous 2 letters, I now understand that even those times of darkness, I was on such a higher level than even my highest times in Chutz La'aretz. Rav Meir Meprimizhan understood that even his hardest times, his most darkest times in Eretz Yisrael, he was on the way higher level than he was in Chutz La'aretz. We may not all be zocheh to understand that and see that. We're going through difficulties. Eretz Yisrael niket b'yisurim. So the tzaddikim like Rav Meir Meprimizhan understood that. But we have to at least have that knowledge. If we have that knowledge, and we'll all have that chizuk, every second we're in Eretz Yisrael, we're doing the mitzvah to say. Thank you, Ephraim, for having such a beautiful kenes. Ve'hatzlacha.